Hi, I'm Jenyns Strauss from InnovaBuzz. Welcome to episode number 36 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, designed to help smart businesses with an interest in innovation become even more innovative. In this episode, I'm live in a recording studio with Troy Dean of WP Elevation and David Jenyns of Melbourne SEO Services and Video Productions. This is a fun interview. It's the first time I've actually done it live in a studio. Now, we talk about the importance of systems and processes to every business. Both Troy and David have been on previous podcasts, so have a look at episode 12 for Troy and episode 27 for David. And there we learned about their businesses and their journeys. In today's episode, we explore why businesses need robust and well-documented processes and systems in order to profitably grow their business. We dissect the environment, the culture, the structure and systems that need to be in place within the business and how to bring everyone on the journey of systems and processes. This is another great episode with a lot of really valuable advice from two experts. So let's get into the Innovation Hive and get the buzz from Troy and David.
This is the InnovaBuzz podcast, helping smart businesses be even more innovative.
Hi, I'm Jenyns Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and welcome to this episode of the InnovaBuzz podcast, which is going to be slightly different. So I have my two guests with me today live in a recording studio, which is quite unusual. So our guests today are Troy Dean from WP Elevation and David Jenyns from Melbourne SEO and Video Productions. So welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So, Troy, tell us about WP Elevation in one sentence.
Sure. WP Elevation is the world's largest business community for WordPress consultants.
Excellent.
There you go.
And David, tell us about Melbourne SEO and Video Productions in one sentence.
Yep, we help businesses market themselves online.
Excellent. That's great. And as I said, today's episode is going to be something slightly different. And in the past, I've had both Troy and David as guests on the podcast. So if you're interested in learning more about them and their business, then refer back to that podcast and I'll have the links to that in the show notes underneath the episode. So as I said, we're going to talk about something different today, and it's about the importance of systems and processes in a business. Now, David has developed a product called System Hub, which I'm sure he'll tell us a little bit more about later on. What I'd like to explore is the whole background in terms of why a small business should be developing robust and well-documented processes and systems and how that's going to help them. So I'd like to invite Troy, why don't you start off 1 minute on why a small business should have some robust processes and systems?
Sure. Well, as we've kind of moved out of manufacturing widgets and we've moved into the information economy, a lot of businesses are selling services, and a lot of those services are essentially our knowledge and our insights that we're imparting to clients. And as a business owner or anyone within a business, there are only so many hours that you can interface with clients. So in the old days, in the manufacturing days, we worked out, robots and processes and production lines to remove the humans as much as possible to speed up the manufacturing process to keep the business profitable and also to lower the cost of manufacturing so that we could be competitive in the marketplace. And that's kind of what we're doing now in the information economy and in service businesses. So if you're providing any kind of service to clients, you need processes and systems so that you as the business owner or head of a particular department can, remove yourself or as many humans as you can from that process and systemize it and streamline it so that you can deliver your service to the customer at a competitive price point and still keep the business profitable. And processes that are repeatable and that are predictable and give you a predictable outcome are the only way to really deliver that service at that profit point.
Great. Yeah. And David, what
you hit the nail on the head. The biggest thing for me, and being a small business owner, I know what it's like when you're stuck on the tools, doing the day-to-day operations, and it's very hard to free yourself from the business. And systems and processes have been the way that I've managed to extract myself from the day-to-day operations. So it really, for me, is just a way to free the business owner and scale what you're doing. It's a way to consistently deliver a product or a service consistently to get a same predictable result. So that's systems. It's just required for business to work without you.
And I was, what was I looking at? Something that you'd put out. Oh, it must have been your TED Talk, your recent TED Talk, where you talked about how you came to systems and processes, and I've heard that story before, so that's quite fascinating. So we'll post a link on that, but basically David was educated from a young child to work on systems and processes.
The sheet.
Yes, the sheet. Developing the sheet 2.0. That's right.
So what I'd like to explore a little, because we can put together systems and processes as you've described in a small business, and we can get other people running some day-to-day things, but there's always a challenge getting people on the same page and understanding why, from their point of view, should they be running systems and processes, and how is that going to help them do their job better. So what I'd like to explore is kind of starting off with the environment. So in your businesses, what kind of environment do you put in place before you implement systems and processes?
Like from a culture perspective, to get the team to do it. I think the biggest thing for a business owner, they intuitively get the idea that they need systems, but they're busy. They don't have enough time in the day just to serve clients, let alone to try and find some time to make a process or a system. So I actually think what you need to do is you need to get a champion in the business for systems. It's quite rare for the business owner to really be the person driving that innovation forward. So, because it really does need to flow through the entire team, I believe. If you get just one team member doing it, then they might create some nice manuals, and maybe when a new staff member starts, someone will go through them just once, but they're never really looked at again. But I think the benefit of a system comes from just continually working them, continually chiseling them away till they just get efficient and part of the way that you and the rest of the team do business. So it starts off first with getting someone within the business who can champion it. Then you need to introduce the idea to the rest of the team, where they start to take ownership of their processes and procedures. So whoever is working on a particular task should be the first person to try and document it, and then there should always be the ability for them to pass it down the line. And I mean, we'll talk a little bit about some of that methodology around making sure that always more than one person in a business is trained up to do a process and procedure. But I think, and constantly asking the question, there's really no way around it other than always coming back to the team member as the business owner or that champion of, when someone asks a question, is that a system? Have we built that into the system? Where's the system for that? Can you show me where that's documented? Like it's just a continual process. So to really get it, it has to be part of the business culture. And that's quite hard for a lot of businesses, and that's why they find it difficult to transition to a systems methodology, because to grow the business to one size, a lot of people get stuck in those habits, and then to go, no, this is now the way that we do things, can be quite hard.
Yeah, that's right. And I see that as a challenge, because the business owner understands, they want to grow, they want to get more leverage, and systems can do that. But what's the why for the individual staff members, and how do you bring them on board?
Absolutely. And I think if the clearer you are about your vision, and I know, go back to the cliche about vision, mission, values, but it's so true. And in fact, the older I get, the more mature I get as a business owner, the more I understand how important vision is, and that without it, none of this stuff can happen without vision. And so if, I'm constantly trying to educate our team about why we're doing what we're doing, and it's because we have a metric, we have a number that we're trying to achieve, which is not actually a revenue number, it's an engagement number with our customers, and that this system is designed to help us achieve that particular number. And the benefit of us achieving that number is that we have this greater impact on our customers. Yes, we will be more profitable, which allows us to hire more people, pour more resources into the business, which allows us to better impact our existing customers or reach a wider audience. So constantly reiterating why it's important to get these systems right. And not just because, you don't want to be here till 7 p.m. working. That's not a big enough reason to get the system right, because funnily enough, most staff are happy to stay till 7 p.m. and work because it makes them feel productive. But the reality is, if we get these systems right, it will help us achieve the metric. And so just, and I don't think I've done that particularly well over the last years, but I'm getting better at it, communicating the why this is important, why these systems actually matter to the business.
I want to add something to that as well, linking it down to the individual themselves and letting them know this is how you progress and how you grow.
Yeah.
How you move on from a task is fully systemize it and then pass it down the line, and helping the team to understand that their whole role really is to try and keep making themselves redundant in the tasks that they're doing, and that's okay, and passing it down the line to more cost-effective ways to get tasks done. So it's really to help them to understand, if you want to keep growing and learning, then this is the way that we do it. You just keep putting in the systems behind you.
And in fact, your mate
that's
Nick,
a really good point.
at your event, your mate Nick said this thing that stuck in my head. It was you use systems to drive the business, and you use humans to be creative. You don't hire humans to push buttons and do repetitive tasks. You use systems and automation and technology and processes to make sure that happens, and you hire humans to be creative. And I know we've got team members who give them half a day a week of free time will come up with great ideas and creative ways of adding value to the business or further serving our customers. But if you don't have processes in place to help them do their job, they just never get that half a day a week to do that thinking. So I'm always kind of dangling that carrot with our team members, going, you want to spend half a day, making some videos or doing something creative, we've got to get these systems right to make sure the rest of the business is being driven.
Yeah, but I take your point that the culture and the vision of the company is a really important one, and getting the people on board. For me, we're going through some things right now, and it's around training. Training of, what you said, Dave, in terms of the first step is you learn how to do a particular thing. The second step then is you teach somebody else to do that. And in order to do that, you have to have it documented so that you can help somebody else do it, and the documentation is the process. So that's all built into my ongoing training program, which we sort of kind of do a training task every month that each of the staff does. So it's kind of building that environment as well. So it's hooked in with training as well as the business processes.
Are you familiar with bananas in pajamas?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have this thing in our business where we call B1 and B2. So for every task, there's always a B1 who is the originator of the system, and then B2 can always do it and backs up. So that way you've never got a situation if someone drops off the perch or wants to change out of a position, moves on, whatever the case is, there's always someone that can step in. And that's really important for any business. You just don't want to be single source dependent or single anything dependent.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And it's a bit of a challenge with a very small business. So.
I don't know if we're going to cover this, but I just need to add to that while I remember it. Dave, you taught me the system for creating systems, which is basically to film what you're doing and then send that to someone who's good at writing processes. Well, when I adopted that, I didn't have anyone internally that could write the processes, so I hired a girl in the States to watch my videos and turn them into processes. Now, she doesn't know anything about our business. Now, we've just rehired her as we're going through another growth spurt. We've rehired her, and she doesn't know anything about our business, really. She's a complete outsider. And so what's happening now is we make videos, we send them to Kristen in the States, and she turns those videos into a process. But because she doesn't know much about our business, it's actually forced us to make better videos, because we have to explain to a complete outsider how our processes work. And then she's documenting it and feeding those processes back into the business, and she's a complete outsider. And that just happened by accident, really. But it's paying off, I think.
Yeah, well, I tell my team the test of a good process is you can give it to somebody off the street, and they can do it.
Yeah.
With
some level,
some level of intelligence. But all right. So in terms of the structure that needs to be in place then within a small business to get good processes and that, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because we're going through, as I said, we're going through a growth spurt now, and what we've found over the last 6 weeks is we've kind of reached these stalemates, and we've had to pull back and ask ourselves what's going wrong. And it's because we don't have because we're a small business and we're growing, we don't have clear delineation between roles. So when you're a small business, you might have someone doing marketing and someone doing operations, but at some point everyone's kind of doing a bit of everything just to keep up. And so recently I basically put my business partner in charge of operations because he's really good at it, even though he doesn't really enjoy it. And because I said to him, we need someone to own processes, right? It's got to be someone's job to make sure the processes are right. And so that's basically when we went and rehired Kristen. And So our structure now is that anyone makes a video, feeds it to Kristen, she makes the processes, but my business partner ultimately is responsible. If the process breaks, it's on his head. Now, his job is to train Kristen to become the process queen and to really understand processes. But the ultimate responsibility lies with him. And the ultimate responsibility for marketing lies with me. So if we do a launch and it's a complete failure, or we don't, get our expected result, I have to look at what went wrong. But if things aren't being delivered to our customers and it's a systems thing, then my hands are off. Whereas previously I would try and dive in and assess the system and fix it. Now I deliberately have to put my hands behind my back and say, I don't work in operations anymore. I can't help you. And I think you really need to have that clear delineation in roles so that someone owns that project. Otherwise there are kind of too many cooks in the chef and the broth gets spoiled, so to speak.
Yeah. I think you're right. And it was almost like that thing I was saying with the idea of having a champion in the business who is the systems person. And then you need that thing you touched on before, the system for creating systems. And then other things that stick out as far as like what's the framework. You've got to be careful not to over-document. I've seen that many times where someone falls in love with the idea of systems and then tries to systemize everything, where sometimes just focusing on your core 7 to 10 processes and nailing them right can give you huge wins rather than trying to systemize how you take out the rubbish, how you wash the dishes, how you lock the door at night. So prioritizing the way that you work on that, getting the whole team on board, making sure that you keep it simple. That's the other thing as well. I believe systems need to grow organically. So rather than trying to block it out and, do 2 or 3 days where you just smash them out and get them just perfect like Troy did the other day. A lot of people find that very difficult to do. Sometimes just capturing just the bullet points to start with, and then the next time you do it, you flesh it out with the sub-bullet points and have it grow over time. I'm not a fan of those processes and systems where people do screenshots for every single step in the way, and these processes are miles long. I like a video that if someone's doing it for the first time, they watch that first, but then next time it's just bullet-pointed checklists that they come back and refer to, rather than lengthy processes that need to be updated every time the interface changes.
Yeah, it's really interesting you mention that, and I'm glad to hear you say that because I didn't know your stance on that, but I've seen processes that say, open the document in Word, or, open the Word document. Well, we all know to opening in Word. Right? And then I've seen other processes that say, open Word, go to File Open, and then they've got a screenshot of File Open. It's like, really? Like that? I was looking at that going, my processes aren't that detailed, and I don't think they should be. I actually think it's a bit patronising to have details like processes that are that detailed, because if you're employing someone who doesn't know how to open a document in Word, they're probably not the right person for the job,
Improve your hiring system.
Or give them some basic training when they first come on board, I'm glad to hear you say that anyway.
You can always refer back. I mean, you can probably find 100 documents on Google that say, how do you open a Word document?
That's right. If in doubt, refer to Google.
That's right. So we have a process on ours which is called the problem process in our company, which is called the problem process. And so if you run into any problems, ask one of the other team members. That's step 1. Step 2, if that hasn't solved your problem, go and Google it. Step 3, after you've been to Google and you've found out some new stuff but still don't have your problem solved, go and talk to some more team members. And then step 4, if all else fails, come and talk to me. So,
and I'll teach you how to use Google.
So, I lost my train of thought here. One of the other things you said, Dave, I think, was around not documenting everything. And what I'm always a real strong believer in is documenting what you're actually doing in the system, as opposed to, actually, we should be doing it this way, so I'll write that down, but continue to do it the way I've been doing it.
Yeah. I think for systems to grow organically, that's the way to do it. You capture what you're doing and you tweak as you go. And that's why I think you can't just write something once and then leave it, because the real money in a business is the systems and processes and the way that you do what it is that you do, and the way that you reach that outcome and have the best processes and systems is by continually tweaking and improving them. That step's inefficient. And you can't just lock yourself in one room for a day and then do that. It has to happen over time, and things change. I don't think there is another way to do it.
That's right. And I like what you suggested too. I'm thinking the light version or the expert version of the process. So, you've got the step-by-step guide, which is for the new people doing it.
Yep.
And the expert version, which is kind of
and
just
sometimes,
an overview.
depending on the task, you'll have the main bullets, and then which is almost like a checklist item of what needs to be done. But then under that, all the sub-bullets, that's again for more of the newer person, so they can kind of see, that's, the finer nuances on it. But once you've done it a good number of times, you still want someone to refer to the checklist, but you don't want them to have to go into painstaking detail. They can skim through. And then there's another distinction, which we're just starting to test at the moment, is at the end of a system, which is what to look for to know that the process has been successfully completed.
Yeah.
So, what does the outcome look like? So that way, again, the expert can do the quick scan, go down to the bottom and know, well, here are the 3 things I have to check. And if they're in place, I know that we've got, successful outcomes.
Yeah, I was just, next thing on my bullet list here is benchmarks. So I was just going to ask about, what benchmarks do you have in place to measure the success of the systems and also whether they're being used?
One thing that we've started doing when it comes to benchmarking, as far as even looking outside of our own business, I've stopped doing that to a certain extent because I feel like systems grow very organically, and I think a lot of innovation that I've seen with what we've done have been doing with systems is because I've not really been looking at what other people are doing. We've just been doing it and perfecting the way that we're doing it. And it's only now, probably in the last couple of years, that I've started sharing what we're doing and the way that we run projects. And I'm getting a lot of really great feedback. And I think part of that is because we've approached it with fresh eyes and we haven't necessarily tried to model and copy off what others have done. I think benchmarking internally is a good thing, though. Like when it comes to numbers of team members doing certain tasks, we now have a guide for how long certain tasks should take. So when someone new comes on board, we might give them a little bit of extra time, but then if it really blows out, and it's a good management style to be able to come back to them and say, if this task took 3 times as long as we think it should, we can kind of say, the reason for us coming to you and talking this through is because we want to understand what you're doing, so maybe we can help perfect and improve your process and the way that you're doing things. So it's a nicer way of basically saying you're not moving quick enough. So it's a nice way, because it could just be that they're missing a step or they're not quite completing something right.
We use Zapier a little bit which is an API integration tool, which allows us to integrate like Asana, our project management tool, for example, with other software that we use, so that once someone has completed a process and they tick the task off in Asana, it automatically triggers other things that happen in the business. So it might push a notification into a Slack channel for us, which is our internal communications tool, so that generally speaking, we know if a process is going to fall over before it falls over, so we can be a little bit proactive. And we have a lot of outbound communication with our customers. We have multiple newsletters that go out every week. We have multiple touch points for our students in our courses. So it's really important that we stay on top of those things and that things get addressed before they fall over. And if that means that ultimately myself or my business partner have to stay back late for half an hour one night and pick up some loose ends because the process is broken, then I'd rather do that than wake up at 4:30 in the morning having a panic attack because someone hasn't received something that they purchased and for whatever reason the process hasn't worked. So we use a little bit of automation as a kind of a checks and balance. And we also, just to touch on what Dave was saying too about having, this process is complete when, and then painting a picture of what it looks like. We also document our technical specs. So we also document that, this process is triggered by a Zapier from a previous process. And when you complete this process, it will trigger the next part of this process through Zapier. So if you don't tick this off, you're actually impacting other people in the business who won't be able to do their job or won't know to do their job because you haven't ticked it off. So just trying to paint a holistic picture about how so that we don't work in silos, that we all know that we're part of a team and that the rest of the team is depending on us to actually complete those tasks and, tick them off accordingly.
Yeah, I really like that. Zapier is a great tool, and I'm going back through the ones that I've set up in the past where I haven't actually documented what it is because this stuff happens from time to time that I thought, well, now, why did that happen?
Yeah.
It's just an old app that's set up somewhere. So, setting that up, and then I like the what's the outcome, what's the end result look like is really good too. I think that's sort of part of the structure of the process to help people.
The other thing that we include at the start of our processes is why. We always document why this process is important and the implications if it doesn't happen, and then we also document what you need. So just to make sure that everyone's got the right login details that they need for different software apps, or someone's got a credit card that they need, or whatever it is they need to complete that task. And if they don't have what they need, who to get in touch with to make sure they can get what they need to complete that task. So they check that they've got everything they need. It's like cooking. I think of it as like cooking. Mm-hmm. You're going to need some turmeric to make this, and if you don't have any, you better go to the shop and get some now. Otherwise, it's not going to turn out.
Yeah. What do you cook in turmeric? That would be like a curry?
Or a dal.
Yeah,
like a dal. It's basically colouring, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Turmeric lattes are very popular now. My wife had a turmeric latte on the weekend up on the Gold Coast.
Love to give it a
go. She wasn't a big fan, actually. Just saying.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of, you mentioned, the why and what tools you need. So what are some of the other things that you think are important in terms of implementing systems and processes in your business and making sure that you can successfully implement individual systems?
I think a feedback loop is really important. So whatever tool you're using, it needs to allow for whoever's running the process to be able to comment on the process and leave feedback. And in our case, that goes straight back to Kristen, who, again, who's an outsider who doesn't really understand the intricacies of our business. But it's good because it forces us to, and we're not perfect at this, but it forces us to communicate with her knowing that she doesn't really understand what we're talking about. So to be really clear in our communication and not presume that she can fill in the blanks. And I also use Droppler a lot for making really quick videos. So Droppler is a screen grabbing tool that also allows you to record screen casting. And the thing I like about Droppler is that you don't, like traditional screen casting software like a ScreenFlow or Camtasia, you need to record it and then you need to export the video, whereas Droppler does it on the fly. You literally just draw with a crosshair, you draw on the part of the screen that you want to record. You can use voice recording to explain what it is you're doing, and as soon as you stop recording, it uploads it to the cloud and gives you a URL that you can just paste into an email or into Slack, and say, hey, here's the video, can you turn this into a process? And so that's definitely sped up my productivity because I can, as I'm going to do something, I can just activate Droppler, record it, and then it's done, and I can just stick the short link in Slack.
Which is a nice way to start capturing everything. I think that's the key as the business owner. Start recording everything that you're doing, get those little video links, create some sort of system depending on where you're saving it, and that's really all the business owner needs or should be doing, which is capture them doing the task and then get a team member to document behind them, following a system for creating systems.
Yeah. I think this is completely off topic, but I think it's really also, and I think also it's really important if you can in any way build in some leveraged revenue into your business.
Recurring revenue?
Recurring revenue or leveraged revenue, because so leveraged revenue is kind of this idea that I'm exploring at the moment because everyone talks about passive income, which, it just doesn't exist. I know this is a family time slot, so I won't say probably.
So Troy's shuddering on the seat here.
Yeah, correct. Passive income just doesn't exist. But recurring revenue is great and leveraged income is great. And I'll tell you why, because if you've got some leveraged income, so say, for example, Jürgen, you were saying before that you took, traditionally what you would do is provide a service to clients. You've taken that, turned it into a workshop that you can teach, and you can record that workshop and cut that recording up and put it up online as, content marketing or even a paid product. Well, then what leverage revenue does is it actually frees up the business owner's time. Recurring revenue or leverage revenue, whatever you want to call it, it frees up your time. And the thing that I realized is that before, when I was 100% client services, I didn't have time to document any of my processes. And I think that's ultimately why my client services business drove me nuts. And the reason I got out of it is because I was constantly reacting to clients' demands. Whereas when I get into the product space, now that we're selling essentially a product to customers, you make it once, sell it over and over again in the way of an online course, I all of a sudden found that I had time in my hands. And with that time, I turned my attention towards documenting the processes. So I would just encourage anyone listening that whatever business you're in, if you can think about any way that you can productize your service and turn that into some kind of leverage revenue to free up some of your time from interfacing with clients and spend some of that time documenting your processes.
I think that's the hard thing for a lot of business owners. It is how do they, stuck in the business, you're just like, oh, when am I going to find the time to do X?
Yeah.
And you really have to. I think some sort of productization of what you're doing, even if it is a service, like that's classic built to sell.
Yeah, correct.
Sort of break it down. The other thing that I wanted to mention was when it comes to implementation was understanding the distinction between document management and project management. I think that some people try and merge the two together, and we use something like Asana or Basecamp, Podio, plenty of different project management tools, but having that manage the actual doing, who's doing, when's it done by, communication, I think that all needs to live in one location. And then the documentation of how you do what it is that you do, almost like a manual, that needs to be somewhere else. You're trying to cross the two over. You don't know, oh, should I be checking this off over here that it's complete, or should I be checking it over there? And then I think that leads to confusion. I've not quite seen yet something that does both very well. Usually they'll do one better than the other, and then that usually means that they might be dropping the ball on project management or something else.
Well, that's a good point, because I guess when I first started, I tried to have it in one system, and then what happened, people on the project management system would tick things off as done, and then of course because we set it up to archive stuff that was ticked so that it wasn't going to fill up and clutter the screen, then we lost some of the stuff. So that's
the real value. Again, I just keep coming back to this is me thinking as a business owner rather than someone working in the business. When I want to sell the business, the thing that's going to have the value that I can hand to the potential buyer is, here is the way that we run our business, the actual operations manual. This is what you're paying for. This is why you pay the $1 million or dollars, whatever it is, to buy a McDonald's franchise or what else. You're buying the manual. You're not buying some of the other stuff. That's where the money is.
Yeah, that's right. $700,000 apparently.
From McDonald's?
From McDonald's franchise. I've read that
just for the name, and then you probably have to pay for the fit out of the store and everything.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Plus,
Yeah, so it'd be north of $1 million to set one up. But $700,000 for the book, basically.
Yeah.
I read that recently. Yeah.
So you've got to start writing your own business book.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. And so I want to talk a little bit about people. You mentioned earlier about having a champion on board, and I certainly had an experience in my corporate life. We actually implemented a system for the research people to go through a research process, but we took it right back to idea through to commercialisation, which is a little bit foreign to scientists in a research department because they just wanted to work on new ideas and so on. And I ended up being the champion for that on a global basis, which was quite a big challenge, but we got through that. But, there are a lot of people issues there to get everybody on board in a bigger organisation. So how do you see that working in a small team?
It's definitely going to start with the business owner in that once they get the idea, they need to keep reinforcing it to the rest of the team. I think it's important you always lead by example when it comes to the team. So that's got to be a part of it. Then understanding, I think, having that champion in the business is next. Having some sort of process that introduces it to the team and does it gradually. There's nothing worse than coming into a team and saying, all right, let's throw out what we've been doing in the past. We're starting fresh now. Let's rewrite all of these processes and procedures. Now you follow this to the letter, and if you don't, you're out. Like, that's not a way to manage. Understanding where you're at the moment and making small sort of strategic moves that kind of move you closer, and getting them on board and having buy-in. Again, people want to be involved in that process. So get them involved in identifying, well, what are the repetitive tasks that are going on in the business? Get them to help identify what they are. Get them to take ownership of creating the first version of it. Find your B1 and your B2 in the business who, will then look after it. I think it needs to be a whole team endeavour, and Troy mentioned it before at the start about comments. There needs to be comments backwards and forwards. And that's really the way to do it. It can be a little bit of a cultural shift because, especially with creatives, I know offering video services and things like that, we work with creatives, and sometimes creatives see systems and processes as limiting. So there's always the balance there, but then that just means you've got to make sure that you've got the counterbalance to them. So for some of our creatives, we'll have the project manager who's quite particular with, down to the detail of scheduling times and following up and ticking things off, which enables the creative to be a bit more sort of free moving. So you kind of need to make sure you've got both, and understanding different personalities as well. Some people will embrace systems, others will find it like pulling teeth.
Yeah, that's right.
100%. And just to dovetail on that, I think the clearer the business owner is about the vision, and the better that the business owner is about communicating that vision to the staff, then the more chance you've got of getting the team on board. And if the business owner is really passionate about the vision, that helps. And if you're not, maybe you should ask yourself, what are you doing? And also, what I'm learning is not forcing people uphill. Like, we've got certain people in our organisation who I just don't think are very good with systems, and so I try not to make them write systems, because I try and get other team members to interview them about their process, and then get the other people who are good at writing systems to actually write the systems. And we're still working through that, and it's not by no means perfect. But I think it's really important that you try and put people in the right seat and try and play to team members' strengths. And the challenge is then, if you've got lots of people who are really creative and no one who's analytical, then you need to hire someone who's analytical.
I think the other thing, as you're growing a business as well, at different stages of the business, you're going to need different resources. And there is times where a team member might have helped you grow up to a certain point, but then if you are continuing to grow and moving to a different phase, like I think systems and processes, typically speaking, if you're a brand new startup and you haven't quite figured out your service offering and you haven't figured out who your target market is, I wouldn't be starting with systems and processes. It's further down the line.
That's right.
So understanding where you are in the cycle, and then addressing it once you're a little bit more established, and that's the bridge to move through to another level. So that being the case, you need to find out, well, if staff members are having trouble fitting in with that, well, are there other roles that might be more well suited to them, or they may not be the right team member at that point in time as well.
Because first of all, you've got to prove that you've got a business model that's commercially viable. You've got to prove that you've got a product or a service that people are going to pay for. And then once you've proven that, even if it's not profitable to begin with because it's the concierge version and you're doing lots of it manually, and, the business owners are working, 7 days a week to make it happen, then the next stage is to put those processes and systems in place to turn that idea into something that's profitable. And I think that's the real, you kind of taught me this about the 3 different stages of business growth, and it's that middle stage where systems and processes, once you've proven that you've got a product and service that people want to pay for, it's the systems that make it profitable.
Otherwise, I'm just imagining someone who hasn't yet proven it yet, and they start documenting the system. I have the perfect system to lose your money.
That's right.
I've documented it.
So there's a system for going through the stage of business. That's right. Actually, something you said earlier, I thought, that's good. Having different people in the organisation with different skills, and picking those people that can write processes and those that might be able to do different ways. So I've got one team member who comes up with some ideas and does some unique things from time to time. I say, how did you do that? And he said, I just did this. And I said, well, can you do a video? Show us how you did it. So because that's his background, he's actually trained as a video and media person, so he actually likes to do the videos. So he does the videos, and we say, okay, well, there's a process for doing that if we ever need to know how to do that before. So recently he doctored a photograph for us in Photoshop that we had to use in a website. We had to blur out some logos, and I'd actually done a training course in Photoshop a few weeks before, and I fiddled around trying to blur out these logos and couldn't do it. So I said to him, you probably know how to do this, and then he did it, and then I said, can you do a video just for me so I know how to do it? So
one other one that popped into mind, and this is, I suppose, sharing experimental things, because you just made me think about it then, and this is something I haven't yet figured out whether or not it's a good idea or not, but I'll share it anyway, is we're toying around the idea of gamification of systems improvement within the team. So trying to encourage the improvement of systems, having some way of recording documented changes, and then team members that help to improve systems that get accepted changes will then earn points, and then potentially at the end of the month having a leaderboard and rewarding it.
Yep.
So you're rewarding that behaviour. I haven't yet figured out if that's a good idea. We're just kind of dabbling with the idea at the moment, because I also don't want to get to a point where, people are putting in full stops and things like that to kind of see if they can game the system. But I think there's something to be said, again, that kind of just helps to say, well, this is part of the way that we do business, and what you improve or what you measure gets improved. By improving how you're improving documenting how you're improving your systems is a way to try and get attention on them.
And I think one of the things that just occurred to me while you were saying that is that, in a perfect world, I would just employ specialists. Like you talk about your video guy, Jürgen. In a perfect world, I would just have him doing video non-stop, even if the business didn't need that much video, right? Because I'm a firm believer that if you put people in their sweet spot, they'll be happier, they'll be more productive, and they'll have more fun, and that's better for the business, right? So the way to get some team members to buy into processes is to identify what their sweet spot is, and then to dangle that carrot and say, well, I want you spending more time having fun doing what you're good at and what you enjoy in the business. But the only way we're going to get there is if we spend the mornings making sure our systems are done, locked and loaded, everything, all paperwork done. There was this great poster when I was working in sales in the staff room that said, it's Friday afternoon, all paperwork's done, all budgets are met, all KPIs met, and all pigs ready to fly, But it's that kind of mentality. If you can get all your ducks in a row, then people have got free time to actually do the things that they're good at. And when you're a small business, unfortunately, you just can't employ specialists, because even though you do employ specialists, you need them to do other things in the business. So everyone kind of ends up being a half generalist, half specialist. And I think that's where systems can help you remove the generality from your workflow and allow you to focus on doing what it is you do best.
Occasionally, around that idea of specialists, depending on what the process is, we'll hire a specialist just to create the process that then gets passed down the line. So that can be a nice, quick way to get a great process or procedure. So let's say, you want to have a look at the way that you balance your books. So you go to a Xero consultant and say, all right, I need you to create me a process for our end of months checks and measures. He writes the process, and then you give that back to your bookkeeper afterwards.
Perfect.
So stuff like that can be ways to shortcut it. Just comes down to budget, how quickly you want to move, whether it makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I heard you say that at your workshop, I think. I thought that's quite neat. All right, so I do want to move on to the buzz and talk about the innovation, so my normal questions. But before we do that, one kind of wrap-up comment on systems and processes.
Troy?
Thanks, Dave. Well, I told you before I only have 5 stories that I had to tell. This is one of them. I think it's, you guys know now that when I was in Chicago in 2014, I almost had a meltdown, and it was because I was overwhelmed with the business that I'd created. It was like, well, this is all my own fault, And I was looking at coming back from Chicago and looking at what I had to do when I came back, and it was just too much. It was like, I'm just going to go and hide in the cave somewhere, because this business I've built is I just can't manage it. And so for me, that's like the number one reason to put processes and systems in place and get other people to drive those processes and systems so that you don't burn out, because you're no good to anyone. And you're no good to yourself, you're no good to your customers. And if you work out what it is you love about your business, you don't want to end up resenting and hating your own business. I mean, having your own business has massive benefits, as we all know, and you want to try and enjoy your time as much as possible. And so systems and processes allow you to take some of your time back so that you can operate in your sweet spot as a business owner and not just put fires out all the time, which is, gets boring pretty quickly.
Yeah. I think everybody intuitively knows as a business owner that to extract themselves from the business and deliver something consistently to their clients, that they need systems in place. Like, I think every business owner would have to agree with that. So recognizing that, you just need to start to put it into place. Like, I'm not too sure what else to say. Like, I know systems are the key to give you back the freedom that you were looking for when you started business.
Yeah.
Like, that's why you started a business. Yet most business owners are, the least free person known to man. They're the ones working till 12 o'clock every night.
Yeah.
So you need those processes to get that freedom back.
Yep.
And if people listening to this haven't read the E-Myth Revisited or whichever one the latest one is by Michael Gerber, then definitely read that.
And you said it before, Built to Sell by John Borrello. It's just fantastic, that book. Yeah, absolutely. And it takes time. Just be patient. It takes time to get your processes in place.
Yeah. All right, then. So I do want to move on to the buzz. So we're going to switch to innovation. And this is going to be a test because you've answered all these questions before. So I'm going to go back and check what you said last time. So what's the number one thing anybody needs to do to be more innovative?
I'm going to jump in.
Oh, go on. We're going to say the same thing. I know. We're going to say the same thing.
No. To be innovative, you need to create space to think. So as a business owner, you get caught up in the day-to-day, and when the innovation happens is when you give yourself enough thinking room. So, again, that's why systems are fantastic, because they give you that space to have the innovation.
Yeah. Actually, that's a tick, Dave, because that's the answer you gave him the last time.
Is that right? Well, I'm probably going to differ on what I said last time, but something I've actually learned from you, though, is that in order to innovate, I reckon you should publish your processes and your systems online, which is what I've been doing. And the reason you taught me this is because when you publish your processes and you publish your business processes online, you're basically giving them to your competitors. And that forces you to make sure yours are better and continue to innovate, because you've just given away the way we do business online for anyone to steal. Now, the reality is most business owners, as we've just said, are too busy to steal your business practices and put them in place. But it does actually motivate you to innovate because you've just given your best ideas away. So that's mine.
It's very
I don't know what I said last time.
Very Sun Tzu. Like, he was all about, burning the boats. When you land on the shores, you either fight and survive or you die.
Yeah. So I'm definitely a burn the ships company. Absolutely. I work really well when there are no ships left.
Okay, so the second one is, what's the best thing you've done to generate new ideas?
For me, there was a big breakthrough when I started going on holidays. I think as a business owner, I had got very caught up in the day-to-day, but having a young family and then starting to go away from the business and forcing the business to survive without me gave me time to innovate and think, and also surfaced a lot of issues that needed to be revisited and fixed with new systems.
Challenges, but so I was going to say, so basically surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs, and I did that through starting a podcast. I've done that through reading lots of books and hanging out with guys like Dave and Mike Rhodes and Nick and Greg Cassar at events, like speaking at events and just hanging out afterwards, having dinner and just picking brains and sharing. Looking outside your business and what other people are doing, I think for me has been the best way for me to generate new ideas, and looking at other industries as well, looking at the manufacturing industry.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Looking at how the Japanese make cars and working out what you can learn from that.
I think that's where all of my best ideas have come from with systems, is what I lifted from the stock market space. Yeah. Because that's all about creating a trading plan, which is a step-by-step process on the way that you approach the market, and enables you to do all the pre-thinking up front. So when you're in the moment, rather than getting caught up emotionally, you already know what to do. And it's the same with business. You do the pre-thinking so that when you're actually in the doing, you can focus on the doing.
All right. Now, what's your favourite tool for innovation?
I'm glad you are. Something we're using at the moment is systemhub.com. So that's just a way that we document our processes and procedures. That innovation for us comes from capturing it, eyeballing it, and continuing to improve it. That's the innovation for us comes from. It's not as sexy as I'm in a shower and I have this new great idea. For us, it's a bit more structured than that, and it just comes from watching what you're doing, measuring the outcome, and then going, well, how can we tweak this and improve it?
Do I have to pick one? Gee, what did I say last time? I reckon I said Infusionsoft last time. I was on your podcast, but I know this sounds really kind of weird, but for me at the moment it's dictation software. I'm trying to keep my hands, so there's two things I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to keep my hands off the keyboard, I'm trying to end up with a keyboard free life, and I'm trying to get rid of my email address. So Slack is 100% been a game changer, and dictation software, little microphone and drag and dictate on the Mac has improved my productivity 100%.
That's interesting. Yeah, because when I broke my shoulder and collarbone a year ago, I obviously couldn't type, so I had a go at drag and dictate, and I just couldn't.
Yeah, it's a huge learning curve, and you've got to train it to understand your commands and your voice, but it's definitely worth it. I met a guy about 2 years ago who was suffering RSI, and he was a programmer. He's a Ruby on Rails programmer, and he couldn't touch the keyboard. And he spent 6 months programming Ruby on Rails with voice dictation.
Wow.
Yeah, get your head around that.
Next level.
Yeah. Curly brace, semicolon, new line.
That's awesome.
That's good, yeah. All right, what's the best way to keep a project or a client on track?
Baseball bat.
I have a different approach. I think clearly the biggest reason why a client gets off track is because you haven't prepped them and given them appropriate expectations. So you need to tell them up front what to expect. Here is the timeline. Here's how it's going to work. Here's when you're going to be asked to give appropriate feedback. If you don't, then here's what happens. After 7 days, we sign off and we move to that next round anyway. It doesn't mean you have to be an arse about it. If, can you give me 2 extra days? Yeah, that's fine. But the only reason clients kind of push the boundaries is because you haven't really given them any boundaries.
Yeah.
So you just have to, give them, a little pen to play in.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Yeah.
And my advice would be productise your business so you can sell products to customers and not services to clients.
Yeah, which is very similar then, because then when they place an order, they know what they're getting. They're buying a specific product. Yeah.
Great. All right. And what's the best way to differentiate yourself?
For me, this is really easy. Become a specialist. Like the reason that the UVP is so popular is because it's called unique value proposition for a reason. It has to be unique.
Yeah.
You have to be able to say something your competitors can't say. So to say we give good service and our prices are competitive, so what? Who cares?
Yeah.
Like to say we give a good quality product. Well, nobody ever knocked on your door and said, "Can I buy crap?" Like, of course, people expect a good quality product. They expect it at a good price, and they expect good service. That's a given. So you need to be able to say something unique that your competitors can't say. And that forces you to do some soul searching, work out what your sweet spot is, and then just stick to your guns and not get distracted by all the shiny widgets. But just become a specialist.
To add on to what Troy was saying, because I think that's a really good way, and then to layer on top of that is for a business owner, up to a certain point before you start building a brand, an easy way to differentiate is with the business owner. So if the business owner focuses on marketing and bringing their own personality into it, and then they become the expert, which is kind of what you were saying around becoming a specialist, but really leading with that personality, because no one can ever really copy that.
Yeah. And if you look at some of even the big brands like Apple, when Apple, you know, in their heyday, it had Steve Jobs written all over it.
Branson.
That's right. So, be
Troy
yourself.
Dean.
All right. Well, this has been really great. I think this is sort of working out quite well. Hopefully it'll be of value to all our audience. So, where can people reach out and say thank you to both of you?
231 Chapel Street.
So, Revolver Creative. That's where we are.
Fat Yaks. Bring a slab down. And I'm happy to have some of that too. For me, probably head over to the best place for systems. It's systemhub.com. So nice and easy.
And troydean.com.au is the best place for me these days.
Okay. All right. We'll have those links there on the show notes as well. So I always ask at the end, who do you want me to interview on this podcast in future and why?
So I'm going to say Kerwin Ray, who I just discovered today is running a thing called Social Experiment. So Kerwin's a marketing consultant, business marketing consultant here in Australia, and he's just come out and admitted that he has been doing social media very badly for the last 4 years, and he's now got a videographer following him around 3 days a week to film him and his business get good at social media. And he's publishing this as like a web reality TV documentary. So, good on him, courage for doing that. I reckon he would be definitely worth speaking to, because if you're going to innovate, stick your camera on your business and broadcast it. That's going to force you to innovate big time.
Yeah, I like it. The other one, I would interview someone Troy's already interviewed. Seth Godin. When it comes to innovation and stuff like that, he's a bit of a leader in that space. Very articulate, very clear thinker, good values. Yeah, I think that'd be who I'd recommend.
Okay, well, there you go. So, Kerwin and Seth, look out for an invitation to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Troy and Dave.
Awesome.
All right, so finally then, well, not quite finally, but what's the number one piece of advice you'd give anybody that wants to be a leader?
I mean, that's really tough.
Be the best example of whatever it is that you want to lead. I think that's so. If you want to teach something, if you want to demonstrate something, you've just got to start with yourself first, and become a really good example of that.
Yeah, I like that.
And you know what? Don't try and fool yourself that you're passionate about something if you're not. You know, I know the whole congruency thing is a bit kind of woo-woo, but there's nothing more appealing and attractive and obvious than someone who is just operating in their flow and doing exactly what they should be doing. So if you're not passionate about it, don't kid yourself. Just to do something else until you find what it is you're passionate about.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is the audience, whoever your audience is, actually senses that.
100%.
Yeah.
They can smell it a mile off.
Yeah. So success or failure is pre-programmed.
Yeah.
All right then. Well, thank you guys for that. This has been really awesome, and I really appreciate you doing this. So
cool. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Wrap it up here.
Cool.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed the different interview format and the discussion on systems and processes with Troy and David. I certainly had fun doing it and learned quite a few new things. There's definitely a lot of great tips here for all businesses in this interview. All the show notes for this episode will be at innovabizz.com.au/systems. That is SYSTEMS. All lowercase, all one word, innovabizz.com.au/systems for all of the links and everything we spoke about today in this episode. Troy suggested I interview Kerwin Ray, and David suggested I interview Seth Godin on future InnovaBuzz podcasts. So, Kerwin and Seth, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from me for the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Troy Dean and David Jenyns. Thank you to my audience for listening to the InnovaBuzz podcast. We really appreciate that you're here and you take time out of your busy schedules to listen to these podcasts. We'd love you to review this podcast because not only do reviews help us get found, but your feedback helps us improve. You can review us over on iTunes or Stitcher, and while you're there, please subscribe so that you'll never miss a future episode. Until next time, I'm Jenyns Strauss from InnovaBizz. Remember, if you don't innovate, you stagnate. So think big, be adventurous, and keep innovating.